We are live now.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Communities and Partnerships Committee meeting of the 3rd of December 2020. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. Members, you are by now aware of the need to keep your video camera switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep your microphone muted except when I invite you to speak. Please click the raised hand function if you wish to ask a question or comment. There's always a risk that we may run into technical problems, and I would ask for your patience if we do. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. If it's not possible to address the fault, the meeting may be abandoned until such time as it can be reconvened. Can I remind members and officers that all virtual meetings will be recorded. So I'll start the meeting, members, by a roll call. So when I call your name, please unmute and confirm your presence. Councillor Ashwood. Councillor Ashwood.
Unmute, Barbara. I think it looks as if Barbara may have frozen.
It looks frozen, yes.
But she's obviously here.
Yes, I've seen her. So we'll come back to that. Councillor Batchelor.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Costello. I understand she's had to leave on an urgent matter and hopefully will join us later. Councillor Every.
Present.
Councillor French.
She's on her way.
She's on her way. Thank you very much. Councillor Machini.
Present.
Councillor Nieto.
Here. Good morning.
Councillor Smith.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Taylor.
Present.
And myself, Councillor Criswell. So hopefully Councillor Costello and French will join us shortly. Before I start, members, can I just report that our Democratic Services Officer that serves us so well, Nick Mills, has been awarded the National Learner of the Year Award by the Association of Democratic Service Officers. I'm sure you'll all join in with me in congratulating Nick. Very well done, Nick. Well deserved. You'll probably suitably embarrass Nick, but we'll move to official apologies if you could give any. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. There's late apologies from Councillor Costello, who should be joining us hopefully later on.
Thank you very much, Nick. Okay. So declarations of interest, members. Do any members have any interest to declare disclosure of pecuniary or non-statutory interests? None to declare. No, I see nobody indicating. Thank you very much. Just to notify members that Councillor Lucy Nethsinger is to become a full member of the committee following this meeting, as she will exchange places with Councillor Taylor, who is currently a substitute, and who will become a substitute member. So, so thanks to Amanda, and we look forward to welcoming Lucy at the next meeting. So we move on to item 2A, minutes of the previous meeting. We are being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 3rd of October 2020 as the correct record. Can I please ask any member who does not agree with the proposal to use the raised hand function? So any questions or points on the minutes? I see nobody indicating. So thank you very much, members. We'll take those minutes as approved. Item 2B is the action log. And I'd like to welcome Adrian Chapman. Adrian, over to you, please. Thank you.
Morning. Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. So the action log is as published. There are just 3 ongoing actions that haven't been concluded yet, but they will be concluded either before or at January's committee meeting. The update column provides a useful summary update, including confirmation of the dates those actions will be closed. Happy to take any questions, of course.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the action log? No, I see nobody indicating. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 3, petitions and public questions. We have none. So we move on to item 4, the Support Cambridgeshire annual report. Elaine Matthews, I think, is joining us to present the report. Elaine, welcome. And hopefully joined by Julie Farrow as well. Do we have Elaine and Julie?
Hi, Chair. Elaine doesn't seem... Oh, she is there. Hang on. I'll just bring her.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Julie. Welcome.
Nice to be here. Hope everybody's well.
Thank you. So is Elaine introducing Julie first?
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
Yes, hello everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Welcome,
Peter.
Elaine. If you'd like to introduce the report, thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. So you've got the paperwork there with you. I'll just briefly go over the background. I think this committee is quite familiar now with Support Cambridgeshire, but I will just go over with you the background. So in 2016, Cambridgeshire County Council replaced 9 annual grants to the voluntary and community sector infrastructure support organisations with 1 combined agreement. The successful provider for that is Support Cambridgeshire, which is a partnership between Hunts Forum of voluntary organisations as the lead organisation, Cambridgeshire Council for Voluntary Services and Cambridgeshire Acre, the Rural Community Council. The report before you today covers the achievements made during the 4th year of that agreement, which is from the 1st of September 2019 to the 31st of August 2020. Collectively, Support Cambridgeshire delivers support for town and parish councils, volunteering and social action, voice and representation, information and advice, and support for community facilities. At section 2.1, you will see that in November 2019, the Communities and Partnership Committee endorsed the Council priorities for Support Cambridgeshire for the coming year. I won't read those out, they're listed at paragraph 2.1 for you. And I will now hand over to Julie Farrow, who's the Chief Exec of Hunts Forum and the lead organisation for Support Cambridgeshire, to run through with you the achievements made during this year.
Thanks very much, Elaine. Hello, everybody. So yes, this is one of the committees I actually really quite enjoy coming to. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to give you our annual review. And I suppose our annual review comes in 2 parts this year, mainly because of the pandemic. So it's been quite an extraordinary year. And at 2.2, you'll see that the pre-pandemic work was planned and agreed between all partners and the County Council, revolving around priorities for that year. So work went on revolving around our 5 key themes, with all the plans in place and some activities already taking part before actually COVID struck and we went into lockdown. Our response to lockdown and to COVID and how we supported groups actually, changed everything that we did, as it did for everybody. So all partners actually worked from home, and instead of delivering face-to-face support, we actually went to most things being either being done by video conferencing or telephone, but we actually managed to probably do more than we would have been doing normally under this contract, because we were so concentrated on the work that we needed to do. So some of the key outputs that we did, we're revolving around the number of bulletins that we did, the funding alerts, the fact sheets, the fact that all our websites had COVID pages where up-to-date information was added as soon as it was available. We actually did 3 COVID-19 surveys with each of the sector, looking at what we were doing. So the Parish Council did one and got a 51% response rate from parish councils about the impact of COVID-19 on themselves and what they might need support for. We did similar ones within the voluntary sector, looking at the impact of COVID and what they needed. One of the things that we are really aware of is that the number of volunteers that came forward, and you will see at 2.4 that we actually provided online training sessions for new volunteers. So over 2,000 people attended, and they were getting information, advice and guidance on how to keep themselves safe, but also how to volunteer safely. And this included safeguarding training with County Council colleagues, as well as mental health training with Cambridgeshire Mind. So you'll see that we still managed to do our connecting Communities Conference, which is our volunteering and social action conference that we do annually. We moved everything online, and instead of having a one-day event, we actually did something every day for a week. And we got, 210 people going on to our webinars and also actually accessing them later, because they're recorded and kept on the website for some considerable time. Still continued with our training sessions, and 110 individuals attended training sessions. I think one of the things that actually was really useful was the fact that we were doing things weekly. We were not only doing our information weekly, but we were also meeting with groups whenever they needed them. So they had absolute access to staff that are paid for by this contract, and we kept in touch with them, revolving around what they needed and how they could link in with not only the district hubs but the county hub. It was very much a partnership approach, and I think that actually we all worked incredibly well together. And very soon you'll be able to see a research paper that we actually did during COVID that will tell us actually how that partnership between the community, the voluntary sector and statutory partners really came together to support our communities. We managed to actually still get money into the sector for the year from our funding portal. So you'll see the figure there for the year, which is £443,000. But during COVID itself, we actually tracked between March and August how much money we were able to support the sector to bring in, and they were able to bring in just that period of time over £130,000 to support COVID activities. So the partners continued, and you'll see some of the comments in 2.5 revolving around comments that are made by individuals, and they're obviously in the appendices. There are some case studies that you can read, but I'm really conscious that we're quite short of time, so I'm sure that you want to ask some questions. And I'm very aware that Kirsten Bennett is on after me, so I've not said much about the town of Parish Council stuff because I didn't want to steal her thunder. So any questions, Jimmy, I'd be really happy to take.
Okay, before we move on to questions, if I could just conclude this paper, at paragraph 2.7, the committee will see the outcomes that we have already been agreed for the year ending 31st of September 2021. And that will be continue the focus on the 5 main headings in the current grant agreement, with each having a new or updated outcome to suit the priorities relevant to the Cambridgeshire local approach and also the pandemic response and recovery, and which are deliverable within that 13-month time frame. They're shown at paragraph 2.7. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you very much, Julie. I know it's been a very challenging, trying time for the voluntary sector, so I'd certainly like to thank you for all the work you've done in that regard. You did mention partnership working, of course, which has been crucial, and I think the improvement in partnership working is something we must try and sustain going forward, because that's been really good to see. So do we have any questions or comments, members? We've had the paperwork and the appendices, so if there's any questions you'd like to ask, please do. Please raise your hand. Obviously, very comprehensive information, Elaine and Julie. Thank you very much, because no one's wishing to ask any questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So, members, we're being asked to note the achievements outlined in the report, the period September 2019 to August 2020. Note the achievements shown in Appendix 1, the impact of the partnership during COVID, and to note the priority outcomes agreed for September 20 to September 21. So are you all in agreement with those recommendations? Please raise your hand if not. Otherwise, we'll assume they've been approved. I see nobody raising their hand, so we'll take those recommendations as approved. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we move on to item 5, which is the Local Council Development Plan Annual Report. And we have Elaine Matthews again, and this time joined by Cambridgeshire Acres Kirsten Bennett. Thank you, Elaine, and welcome, Kirsten.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So again, you have the paperwork before you, but I'll just briefly introduce the paper that you have there. So in November 2017, a 5-year local council development plan was launched at our county-wide local conference. It was developed alongside local councils and district councils, but also working with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Association for Local Councils, the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Society for Local Council Clerks. And the plan is coordinated by Cambridgeshire Acre as part of their role as a partner in the Support Cambridgeshire, as you've just heard, which is the collective name for those organisations that come together to provide infrastructure support. The local council development plan sets out our collective aspirations for the council, for the local council sector, and in particular recognises the need to increase the potential of town and parish councils and provide support for those councils so they can themselves improve standards and make the most of their opportunities. In November 2019, this committee considered and recorded appreciation of the progress made during the second year. So this paper is to update you on the current year's progress. So I'm now going to hand over to Kirsten Bennett, who will talk briefly to you about the progress made during 2019 to 20.
Thank you, Elaine. Yeah, it's good to be with you this morning to present this paper on the last year's work of this partnership. And this is a partnership between Cambridgeshire Acre and Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Association of Local Councils. And over the last year, we've strengthened that partnership in meeting, I think, probably monthly with the county council and ourselves, which has been extremely important to the delivery of this work with the COVID response we've made. So we do have a local development plan for councils, but really the last year has been more the COVID response. And in 2.1, you can see the response we've made. So the first thing we have done is there was a support that went into actually getting local councils online. Most of them had the equipment, but it was a confidence building exercise to really appear on Zoom together and get the meetings going, but also make sure that we can still continue with the networks and support to local councils when the pandemic started. We also carried out a survey early on, I think that was probably April time we did that, to find out the situation at a community level and the support that local councils were giving to mutual aid groups. That I think was especially important in identifying gaps, referring any needs that were coming up from a local level to the county council and to district hubs, so that support could be given at that community level through local councils. We also usually have the annual conference, which has been an event that's been growing, and we had an online conference this year. We took it online, and a lot of work has gone through all of our partners in making that a really big event. We used a special online platform that none of us had ever used before, so it was an ambitious project, but worked extremely well, and you'll see later in the paper the feedback from that has been good. But highly important, I think, to bring together all tiers of government at this time to talk about the support for local councils and communities. Another large part of the work has been getting out key messages. That's public health messages, the daily county council newsletter that was going out, drawing attention to that and making sure people were using those messages to as a sort of conduit to put on further into local communities. So in 2.1.2, you'll see that we're midway through the local council development plan. It's a 5-year plan. I think momentum is greatly built over the 2.5 years we've been doing it. It has enabled better engagement with councils. We've definitely got better information about what is going on and the needs of support, so that we know what sort of improvement journeys they're on. There has been some, I think, delay in some of the delivery of the actual plan, which I'm sure has happened to many plans, but the sort of limitations of the COVID, and I think also financial limitations, has sort of stopped the pursuit of some of those actions, which is probably inevitable in the situation we're in. The county-wide conference in 2.3, you'll see that we did have 390 people register online for that, which is a huge increase, about an increase of 150 for those that turned up when we did the conference the year before at the hotel. Through that, I think it was a detailed piece of work. We also had market stalls which were high valuable, a lot of download of information that people took away, and a high percentage of people saying that they were going back to their local council to take actions for things they'd learned or things they'd shared on the day. The system allowed a lot of lateral sharing between councils on using chat, which was excellent because they all started to advise and help each other, which is really what you want, that kind of flow of chat and momentum to the workshops. They were highly praised. The morning activities and the videos, I think, were excellent and can be used, I'm sure, again for other case studies. I suppose one thing of everything, there was some technical issues. There's always technical issues with these things. That's the only thing. Some people did have a little bit of a problem signing on, but it was usually probably at their end rather than at the actual our end on that. But that's something to bear in mind on, I think, online things. There's always going to be technical issues. So the next steps with this, we're still in sort of pandemic support mode, and I think there is more key messages over the next months to get out and to support councils through that. But we want to review the local development plan. A lot has changed, but there's been policy changes. Obviously, there's the Think Communities programme. We want to make sure that the local development plan aligns to that. So between now and the end of this contract, I think that the biggest piece of work to do will be to consult with local councils, involve everyone to review that plan and set that going forward so it can finish its lifetime. So thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you, Kirsten.
So to conclude, as Kirsten has already mentioned, the next steps for the final 13 months of the Support Cambridgeshire Agreement, I would just like to draw committee's attention to paragraph 2.4 and in particular 2.4.1, where we do set out there the next steps for the final 13 months of this agreement. You'll see there in bullet point 1, we talk about the successful delivery of a Cambridgeshire Local Council Conference in October 2020. My apologies, Chair, that is a typo. It should say in October 2020, because of course the final 13 months of this contract is from the 1st of September 2020 to the 31st of September 2021. Therefore, the actual delivery of the October 2021 conference will be outside of this current agreement. Without doubt, though, we'll be absolutely working with Kirsten and Alison Brown to make sure that we learn from their experiences, and that as we're designing the next year's conference, we're making good use of any advice and guidance that they've been able to share with us. Other than that, everything is as stated in the committee report, and that's concluding my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you, Kirsten. As with Julie, Kirsten, this has been a very challenging, busy time, I know. And as chairman, I've been closely involved in some of the work you've been doing. So thank you very much for that. It's much appreciated. So open up to members for any questions or comments. Councillor Machini, Elisa.
Thank you very much. A fantastic report. Very nice to see. Very nice to be reminded of what's going on. 2 questions. Number 1, if the agreement comes to an end, does that mean that we stop doing these things? Or are we expecting it to carry on and it just on a rolling basis or something? Just to clarify. Second question, this is motivated a bit more from the point of view where I live rather than when I represent. Parishes can be quite diverse and different in their, in the very nature in a way. I mean, I live in a parish that is very much not a rural parish, and there are a few of those. And I was just wondering if there was, if you're aware how much, if there is any focus in this project about helping parishes build community with specific focus on new communities, and if there's also any sort of support for finding and recruiting and maintaining councillors in parishes that don't have an established sort of pool of those. we know our demographics are very different, and I was just wondering, because that's, you know, every time somebody talks about a parish, that's the experience I have. So it would be very interesting to see if there's anything in here that we can help with. Other than that, it's really, really nice to see, and I long may continue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. Obviously, I'll let officers Elaine and Kirsten comment, but just to say, absolutely, this work will carry on, and I'm sure Elaine will outline the process by which we take this forward. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Elaine, would you like to just pick up on that? Thank you.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Councillor Machini. Really good points. So as you quite rightly mentioned, this is a 5-year local council development plan, and that was, we built that in as part of the development alongside all of the other organisations, including the local councils, who wanted to see a longer term plan. So it does sit, the period of the plan, which is 5 years up to November 2022 at the moment, sits slightly outside of the Support Cambridgeshire contract as it stands now. When we're advertising the new contract for infrastructure support, we've actually removed the need to support local town and council conferences, local town and parish councils as part of the new infrastructure support organisation plan. However, we will absolutely continue to be working with local councils and with those who support them to make sure this development plan continues to be really fit for purpose. So you very interestingly picked up on the point of new communities and sometimes the struggle that parish councils have and town councils have with recruiting and retaining councillors. That's certainly part of the training programme that we have in place already. And I think it's something that we discuss often as a group about how we can support local councils to make sure they are recruiting good people from within their communities to represent them at their local councils. And that's something we continue to do. With regards to new communities, as part of our support with new communities in general, as part of our community support, we help new communities to build up that community spirit even before residents have moved in often. And part of our work is also to help them recognise the value of being part of a local council and the third tier of local government within their community, to be able to play a really active role in that. And we do encourage them to think about their forward agenda plans, if you like, to think about the role that they have often played now. And we've seen that during COVID, the roles where local councils really stepped up and helped their voluntary and community organisations within their patch. So we're already having conversations with them about how they can sustain that and how they can build up that energy and keep that going within their own community and have a role to play in that as part of this ongoing development plan. I don't know if that answers your question, Dawn?
Yes, no, it's great to know that these, I mean, I expected these points to be known, but it's very nice to hear that this is ongoing. And I think I might actually be reminding my local clerk to have a look and see what part he's been taking, because it sounds like we might very well do with quite a lot of this. And quite frankly, I don't really know. I mean, I'm hoping he's up to speed, but, you know, it would be really nice for, you know, for communities like mine to have a bit of a sort of, you know, direct line to some of the support that we need, because it's been challenging for new communities, and it's been incredibly challenging this last year. And, you know, it's nice to know that something is out there to help. But thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Elisa. I've got Councillor Batchelor waiting, but Adrian, did you want to just elaborate on that point? Adrian, was that?
I did. Thank you, Chair. Yes, very much. I just wanted to make sure there was absolutely no ambiguity here, that we believe firmly that town and parish councils are absolutely fundamental to our response, our public service response, and also the work of the county council going forwards. The reason we've removed the specific detail from the new specification for Support Cambridgeshire going forwards is for that very reason. It felt a little bit like it was an additional sort of almost afterthought that we wanted to specifically commission some special work just targeting town and parish councils, when actually it should be front and centre of our work as a council and as a committee. the work will absolutely continue and grow. And indeed, as Kirsten mentioned, we've been meeting during the pandemic very frequently with both ACRE and CAPALC, the Association of Local Councils, to develop a new model of working with those partners to reach all of our 220 or more parish and town councils. And I would say the same is true, particularly for Cambridge City members of residents associations in the city. So non-parish areas must not and will not be left behind. We just need to work in a slightly different way with different groups, but they'll be no less important to our delivery model going forwards. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Adrian. And of course, town and parish councils are a tier of local government, as we are, so we must be working with them all the time. Councillor Batchelor, Henry.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from Alicia's point, I suppose a comment and then also an offer of assistance. So, I mean, I would reiterate that parish councils are, especially in my area, very, very important. I mean, they tend to be the sort of the hub of most communities. I know quality of parish councils can vary around, and especially I think during the last 12 months or so, we have seen other community groups that aren't necessarily parish councils be formed to assist with COVID, and from that we found some very useful sort of contacts locally. So as an offer of help, it might be, I'm sure local members will know of community groups that aren't necessarily linked to parish or town councils that might be worth consulting with as well. So just to offer up local members advice to officers there as well.
Thank you very much, Henry. Yes, I think we all recognise what you've just said, and of course, under the Cambridgeshire local place-based working now, we have area coordinators who can help make those connections. So, working with local members, I'm sure we can identify all those community groups that have been very helpful. So it's not just town and parish councils. You're quite right. So, any other points members would like to make before we move to the recommendations? So thank you very much, Elaine and Kirsten,
Thank you
for attending, and we'll move to the recommendations, members. So it's to consider progress made in year 3 against the 5-year local council development plan, and to consider and comment on the next phase of delivery of the development plan. So members, do you feel you've done so? Please raise your hands if you're not happy with those recommendations. I see nobody doing so, so thank you very much indeed. We'll take those recommendations as approved. Thank you. So now, members, we move on to item 6, which is the Cambridge University Science and Policy Exchange, effective council decision making on community-led initiatives. So we have Amanda Askamo, Director of Business Improvement and Development, to present the report. But with her, I'm hoping we've got the university researchers, Tarian Baird, Alice Fletcher Etherington, Jennifer Leggett, Kirsty McKinley, Charlotte Rendina, Ivan Simpson-Kent. Welcome to you all. And I know Councillor Goldsack's here, who was a sponsor of this scheme. So, so welcome, Mark, as well. We'll come to you later. So, so welcome all. Amanda, are you going to start this off, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Yes, I'll very briefly introduce this and then I'll hand over to the team. So for those who don't know me, my name is Amanda Askam and I'm the Director of Business Improvement and Development. One of my responsibilities is to ensure that this council has evidence and insight that it needs to set policy and make good decisions. And as part of that role, I work closely with Councillor Manning, our member champion for evidence-informed policy, and Dustin McWhirter from the transformation team, to manage our collaboration with the Cambridge University Science and Policy Exchange, which we call CUSPI. This gives us access to the best CUSPI researchers, and they work with us on policy-related questions and challenges. During the programme, which we run yearly, teams of researchers from CUSPI investigate critical questions that have been raised by members and senior officers, and they provide us with evidence-based reports and recommendations on how we might develop our policies to support our strategic outcomes. This work's been really important to us and has really provided us with a lot of evidence and insight in the past. We've been doing this now for 3 years. The programme is an excellent opportunity for researchers to experience policy making at local government level. and for the council to benefit from world-class researchers investigating our problems. Through you, Chair, I'm delighted to introduce one of the Cuspy research teams who've been working on a question of how growth affects community groups and community-led initiatives. When Councillor Goldsack and I proposed this question earlier in the year, we were interested in how Cambridgeshire's growth and economic aspirations work alongside our Cambridgeshire local approaches to foster the personal and community networks that we know are important for good growth. We wanted to know how growth affected that community spirit and everything that we're trying to achieve. Of course, since that time, we've seen a worldwide pandemic. We've seen an amazing response from our communities, as we've just heard in the last few reports, and this gave us a really rich learning space for this question. I'm going to hand over to the Cuspy research team to present their response to the question, and they'll lead us through to their policy recommendations. I think that Jenny is going to be brave enough to go first, so I'll hand over to Jenny. Jenny, if you could introduce yourself, and then as the other researchers come on, perhaps you could just give us your name and your specialist area before you start your piece of the presentation. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. I'm a third year PhD student in clinical biochemistry, so taking a little bit of a leap out of science for this. So we're a team of 6 students, and we took on this question, and actually from what Amanda said, we sort of took it in a direction towards looking specifically at formal health and social care services. So how community initiatives can reduce the need for formal health and social care services, and particularly how growth affects their ability to do that. So to do this, we did some rapid literature reviews to kind of gain a insight into the background of the project and what other people have done previously in this area. We then designed and distributed a survey to the leaders of local Cambridgeshire initiatives, and then we followed that up with phone interviews to some select people. So I'm particularly going to talk about chapter 3, which was the aim of this chapter, was to look at whether community-led initiatives can lessen the need for formal health and social care. We hypothesised that it could, because the health conditions that we're seeing in the present day, these chronic lifestyle-related conditions, metabolic conditions like diabetes, obesity, hypertension, etc., they tend to require a bit more of a personalised approach to prevention and care. And the centralised model of the NHS, when it was established in 1948, we didn't see these conditions previously, and so the centralised model doesn't really give a personalised approach to healthcare. But this kind of personalised approach can often be found at community level. It's been repeatedly shown that engaging communities as advisors in healthcare commissioning is beneficial for health outcomes. But actually, there's an argument to take this even further, because we must consider that communities not only have health needs, but they also have health assets. So they have the specialist skills, knowledge, infrastructure, social networks, etc., to actually provide their own solutions to health and social care problems. And often it's the community themselves that have the best understanding of what is required in their community, what their needs and priorities are, and how they can best address that. So instead of looking at involving communities in decisions, what we were looking at is actually whether the communities themselves could be care providers. So this has been looked at on numerous occasions, often kind of, looking at the outcomes of initiatives that have sprung up organically. And these community-led initiatives have been shown to improve social networks and reduce loneliness amongst communities, which seems to lead to increased health-seeking behaviours, so improved eating, improved exercise, etc., reduced risk behaviours, for example, reduced smoking, reduced drinking, improved mental well-being, and improved health outcomes. So this really shows that it is possible. There are advantages to initiatives that are specifically related to improving health outcomes, for example, peer-to-peer support for different conditions, exercise clubs, healthy cooking clubs. They show a kind of improved health literacy and even better kind of health outcomes. but almost any pursuit that brings the community together is shown to improve the health and well-being of participants, which really demonstrates that improving community health can just be as simple as promoting community kind of social groups. We also saw that these can be hugely financially beneficial. Up to £2,000 per person per year of savings can be gained from implementing peer support groups. And when we surveyed the Cambridgeshire initiatives, we saw that the majority of groups believe that their initiative positively impacts the physical and mental health of both their volunteers and their participants. And they also said that they think that Cambridgeshire County Council has a role to play in improving the health of the local people. So from that, we recommended that Cambridgeshire County Council supports communities to devise their own solutions to local health and social care issues, and also maps local community assets alongside the needs in the joint strategic needs assessment to gain an idea of where the community can add value. So I'll hand over to Charlotte, I believe.
Right, so I'm going to just talk about chapter 4. I'm Charlotte and I'm studying a master's in One Health. So from our research, we also found that community-led initiatives face pressures, and one of these pressures is growth. So one of the examples of how growth can affect communities is that of the Newtown Blues, where a programme that was initially aimed at creating new towns with strong community spirit ended up having almost the opposite effect by creating loneliness, physical and psychological disorders, and other mental health issues amongst residents. So through this effect of Newtown Blues, we then tried to have a look and see what recommendations could come of it and how we could recommend that communities are able to support growth. So first of all, there is a need for developers to understand what can be done to encourage community networks, social engagement, and these support networks, which are very important for communities. So our first recommendation was to support community centres and infrastructure in new developments. So it is very important that a new development contains a community centre right from the beginning, and that residents have the chance to participate in all stages of development, including the planning. Then it's important to promote and support the inclusion of family homes, because families are the ones which are most likely to remain in a community for longer periods of time. Consider the effect of business growth on communities. For example, our survey respondents found that the Cambridge Biomedical Campus had an effect on the surrounding area, and the effect included an increase in traffic, an increase in prices of houses, a lack of long-term commitment, and so it also made it hard to recruit volunteers. Then it's also important to improve affordable venues in existing communities and improve the advertisement of community-led groups to boost the recruitment of volunteers. This can be done, for example, by printing flyers and posters for free, promoting advertising opportunities in schools and libraries, or, for example, newspapers, or as well sending adverts alongside council tax bills. To ensure that everybody is aware of the volunteering opportunities present in Cambridge. And then again, improve the directory of services. So this was not a very good resource when it came to looking at the directory of services which are provided. So the recommendation would be that this becomes the responsibility of the Think Communities Partnership, which will also then allow local knowledge from each partner to inform this resource. And then support volunteer continuity post-pandemic. So we found that during the pandemic, there was an increase in demand for local community groups, and that many managed to meet this demand. However, they were worried about being able to meet this demand long term. So it's important that the council supports infrastructure and is able to help support momentum of these new volunteers that joined during COVID, for example, by signposting them to other opportunities present in their area. and then promote council collaboration with master developers. So in situations where there is already planned growth in an area, then it would be beneficial for consultations to be arranged with local residents and invite them to meetings where it is possible to hear their opinion, hear what they have to say, and then create a checklist of criteria which developers need to follow and need to meet when developing new centres. So these were the recommendations with regards to growth, and now I'll pass on to Ivan, who's going to speak about the next part.
Okay, hello. Thank you for listening. So in chapter 5, we spoke specifically elaborated more on localism. So basically what we said is that localism as a policy agenda, we believe has the potential to bestow greater agency and responsibility to individuals and groups operating on the local level. So what it basically entails is basically you recast sort of local authorities as enablers rather than just merely as providers of community-led public caregiving services. However, so it's basically giving them a more active role in community-led in their own communities. However, that does not mean that they should stop receiving support from more centralized services. It just means that the resources should instead be funneled in a more localized manner. And so, but it's very important that this, when considering sort of resources and enabling communities, that we also foster inclusivity, because if not, basically you can kind of get this sort of disproportionate level of power where you sort of a disproportionate amount of decision making is placed on more highly skilled or people who are richer or free time and more free time, and then at the expense of those who are lesser skilled and have full-time work. So therefore, they're not as able to be as much active members in the decision-making process. So therefore, we said that you need to promote equal representation and be socially inclusive. And this is achieved by encouraging communication platforms between residents and volunteers that are dynamic, informal, and culturally sensitive. And basically, also that local governing bodies and councils should require their members to be both socially and racially sort of informed and also sensitive. And so therefore, overall we give the recommendations that we would give to the council would be to investigate the backgrounds of people who volunteer in Cambridgeshire, sort of get a survey of who's in and who is a member, and also to commission further research on how to successfully engage with residents from a large variety of social backgrounds, both individually and collectively. And to provide, so number 3, to provide specific support to encourage underrepresented groups into volunteering. And lastly, to make the provision of inclusion data and strategies to promote inclusivity mandatory within council grant applications for community-led initiatives, which would then sort of not guarantee, but definitely help to create a more inclusive environment. Thank you. And I'll hand it off to Alice.
Hi everyone, I'm Alice. I'm a 4th year PhD student studying virology. So I'm going to talk to you about our chapter 6, which reported the results of one section of our questionnaire that specifically asked community groups about their opinions of the effect of council decision making on their groups. So some positive examples of council involvement that were noted included the provision of funding, support, advice and advertisement, and also the use of council-owned premises, including libraries. For one particular question, which was how could the council help your initiative, the answers fell into 10 different categories. This included very obvious things like funding and facilities, but also some more kind of nuanced topics such as increasing the recognition and understanding of the work of community groups, improving relationships, and acknowledging and utilising community knowledge. Using these comments and anecdotal evidence from both the community groups and council workers, we developed these 4 further recommendations. Firstly, that the Think Communities Partnership should prioritise provision of a framework for coordination and cohesion, for example, through the use of the proposed place-based workforce, the library's first model, and the funding of partnership projects. Secondly, to continue to expand Think Communities to cover all council sectors, for example, by using the Workforce Development Programme to educate all council workers about the benefits of community-led initiatives in improving health and wellbeing, mandating all council directorates to develop an outcome-based Think Communities policy, or by taking responsibility of the County Council Directory of Services, as already mentioned. Thirdly, through supporting the provision of sustainable and accessible funding. For example, by providing grants that are small but sustainable, so for example, being repeated over multiple iterations, based on proposals that are focused on a rolling set of outcomes rather than outputs. And finally, through strengthening and assisting the voluntary and community sector infrastructure support services, through continuing the support of Support Cambridgeshire and better advertisement of their services. So that's us done for today. We'd like to thank Amanda, Mark and Dustin for all their help in this project. And we'd like to open to questions if anyone has them.
Thank you very much. Mark, I think you'd like to say a few words to start with.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. That's kind of you. Good morning, everybody. I'm not going to elaborate much on the report other than to say how lucky we are. And what I mean by how lucky we are, how lucky we are to have the relationship through the Cuspy setup to receive something as so well thought and well managed as this has. The team on this have been fantastic. They've made a guy in his mid to late 50s feel incredibly educationally inept. And it's been a really, really good experience for me to be involved, as well as for the student to be involved. The report is full of an awful lot of good ideas. I think it should be noted by this committee that an awful lot of the good ideas just built on neighbourhood cares and everything that came from that, and a lot of other stuff. But the research team have done a fantastic job amidst COVID-19 and lockdown. You know, they've still come out with a report of this quality. So I'd just like to conclude with one fact and then some thank yous. It was mentioned in the early part of that report summary that there is a potential for £2,000 per person per year savings. That's 1.7 billion for Cambridgeshire. Just let that sink in a little bit. So if we can get some of that, 10% of that, wouldn't it be amazing? So thank you very much for that. On behalf of Amanda and myself, I'd like to thank the team in front of the committee, and I'd recommend this report to the committee and its recommendations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. That's very, very good. Thank you. And yes, I'd like to thank our Cuspy colleagues, because huge amount of work, a very big document that we've been digesting. And it's very heartening to see, actually, it does chime with our direction of travel with Cambridgeshire Local, but it adds such a rich layer of detail and suggestions for the way forward. So really great piece of work. Thank you. So members open. Adrian, you'd like to come in and then open to members for questions or comments?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's unusual, I know, for an officer to comment on a committee report, but if you'll forgive me, I did just want to say a few things. First of all, I'm still reeling from Councillor Goldsack's revelation he's in his mid to late 50s. I mean, that's just unbelievable. But that aside, for me, this is probably, I'm a bit blown away by this, actually, technical term. I think this is probably one of the best, if not the best, Cuspy reports I've ever seen. And it, as you say, Chair, aligns so well to the work we've been grappling with. So we in the county are treading very new territory through Think Communities, building on the Neighbourhood Cares initiative, but scaling up at some pace. And I think what the researchers have done is to get right under the skin of all that is complex about that. Not only have they done that, but they've given us some incredibly tangible recommendations. I'm particularly drawn to the logic model, which is on page 7, I think, of the main report, page 53 of the pack, because that's, I think, a beautiful way of illustrating the flow of those early actions that can be taken very easily building up to some significantly changed and improved outcomes, one of which can be and should be that significant financial benefit, but there are so many other qualitative outcomes to be achieved through this work. And obviously the focus for the research was around health and social care, but obviously the outcomes, if you look at page 53, those final outcomes, 4 boxes at the top, will inevitably be multiplied up several times, because there'll be impacts on educational attainment, adult skills, worklessness, employment, homelessness, victim-based crime. I mean, I think what the research gives us is products that can cut across all of those other domains, and not just for the county council, but for all of our partners. So, yeah, that's something I will have mentioned actually in my service director update, is the fact that although we've asked the committee previously to commit to those 8 initial Think Communities priorities, what's more important, we think, going forwards, is that we focus on a whole person and their whole needs. And if we ever wanted proof of how important that is, I think this report does it. It's fine for us as an organisation to focus on the things that matter to us as far as demand is concerned, such as adult social care, but actually you can't resolve somebody's challenges through the single lens of adult social care. It's about the whole life experience of an individual and the whole experience of them living in a place. And I think this report brings that to life beautifully. So forgive me, Chair, I just wanted to say how impressed I was and how useful and valuable and actually integral this is going to be to the next phase of our delivery.
Thank you, Adrian. So members, any comments, any questions? Councillor Every, Liz.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I have to say that also involved in one of the Cuspy research projects on our care leavers. I absolutely endorse what Mark says, that it's been a real privilege to have access to your minds and your approach and the way that you've delved down into the circumstances that we would never have had the time to do, which gives us the baseline and the foundation, which endorses everything we're trying to do, which I think is really great for this committee, because this is what we're all about. And I just urge everyone to support the recommendations, because this has been I've watched the youngsters doing the other project and enjoyed doing that, and the amount of work and research that has gone into these is fantastic. So I would just support those recommendations. Why will we not do what these young people tell us to do? Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Batchelor, Henry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to say thanks again for obviously the huge amount of work that's gone into this, and looking forward to all future reports from officers being this forensic. It's it's been a huge amount of work, and absolutely happy to support the recommendations, and looking forward to challenging the officers to fulfil them.
Thank you, Henry. So no pressure, Adrian. So I see no other questions or comments, members. So yes, a huge amount of work gone into this, lots of detail that I'm sure we've absorbed and will continue to absorb. And of course, these recommendations aren't the end, they're actually the beginning, because we're just embarking on Cambridgeshire Local and rolling out place-based working, and this can form a very a great part of informing that work. So thank you very much, Amanda. Thank you, Mark. And thank you very much to the Cuspy research team for this great piece of work. So members, can we just turn to the recommendations, please? We're being asked to note and comment on the findings of the research undertaken by the Cuspy relevant to the effect of council decision making on community-led initiatives. Consider recommendations made by Cuspy as set out in the full report at Appendix 1, and task officers in response to the discussion at committee to prepare a detailed strategy setting out the ways in which recommendations can be driven forward and delivered, either by the council or in collaboration with their partners, and in the spirit of Cambridgeshire Local. So members, please show if you have any objection to those recommendations. Otherwise, we'll take them as approved. I see nobody indicating, so thank you very much, everybody. We'll take those recommendations as approved. Thank you. So thanks everybody for attending. And we'll move on to agenda item 7. So agenda item 7 is the report of the Service Director for Communities and Partnerships. Adrian, over to you. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. And, my pitiful attempt now at a report are going to look horribly amateurish, so apologies, but hey, challenge accepted on the previous item. So thank you. This is the traditional Service Director overview, which combines our ongoing COVID response work with our business as usual activity. I won't go through this in any great detail, but just pick out, as usual, a few key points, if I may. So first of all, on page 148, we've heard reference this morning a number of times to Cambridgeshire Local. I just wanted to explain what that means for our work. With the investment made by GPC a few weeks ago, that signals a significant change or a significant milestone, should I say, in our Think Communities delivery. It provides us with the resource we need to motor now at pace to bring about the sort of changes that committee have championed for so long. And we've recognised that Think Communities as a term is very much an internal term. It's something we've coined. We've used it to describe our work. It does mean we're thinking about communities first, but actually feedback from partners and from some community organisations suggested that it didn't really resonate with them. It didn't really describe what it was all about. And so for the purposes of public-facing activity under the Think Communities banner, we've coined the Cambridgeshire Local phrase, something which does resonate more effectively. It does describe that this is about Cambridgeshire first and foremost, and about being local as far as service delivery is concerned. And in the report at 2.2.2, I've included a version of the branding, Cambridgeshire Local branding, along with 2 suggested uses, showing how both we as a council will use that branding and also how our partners will use it. So we want this to be something that the whole of the Cambridgeshire system, public sector partners, voluntary agencies, parish and town councils might sign up to. It is not to replace any individual organisation's own brand. The county council brand remains as is, but on occasions it will be useful to demonstrate that Cambridgeshire Local is the thing that's driving our work and activity. And so particularly on page 149, you'll see a couple of examples where our own name, along with a major parish council in this case, could add their own identity to a generic brand. So we're asking today for a comment and an endorsement of that approach. At 223, and this is still in relation to the Think Communities Cambridgeshire Local approach, I've set out there the partners that have been with us since the start of the pandemic, actually, and before that in many cases, but they have stood alongside us to deal with the ongoing ravages of the virus. And just to pay credit to them and their efforts, some of which we've heard from and about this morning in the previous reports, but they have worked tirelessly alongside the County Council and other public sector partners to build the response that we've seen, which is the envy of many councils down the country. So what that group of partners has now agreed to is to continue beyond the pandemic, to continue as a community resilience group, and will be the body that oversees the implementation of Cambridgeshire Local beyond just those 8 priorities that the County Council has currently got, to ensure that all of the priorities for all of our citizens, wherever they live, whatever their circumstances, are addressed. So I think an incredibly powerful partnership that can do an awful lot of great work. And at 225, 226, I just wanted to mention the workshops. There have been a couple of workshops with staff and the November workshop of committee. Thank you for everyone that joined that. I think there were 1 or 2 technical issues for a couple of you, so apologies for that. I really am sorry. It was a great event and we got so much information from it. That is now being formed into the delivery plan for Think Communities, and we'll be bringing an update on progress based on those workshops to committee in January. So what I really want you to see is the full impact of your effort and patience with us over the last couple of years to get to this place, and it's really starting to pay dividends. So that's an update on Think Communities. I'll just turn now to business as usual very briefly. 2.3, in relation to community safety, we're reporting there a funding allocation linked to the new duties. The new duties we updated the committee on, I think, back in August. And just to remind you, the upper tier local authorities will have new duties in a new Act of Parliament that becomes statute in April next year, to ensure that the accommodation-based needs of victims of domestic abuse and their children, including those who require cross-border support, are met, and also that we particularly support vulnerable victims or those at greater risk of domestic abuse and sexual violence. The funding we've received is designed to allow us to set up systems and procedures that ensures we can meet those duties, and we will, as the report says, be including our plans on how we will make this work in the January Service Director Committee report. I also say in that section actually that demand for support from our domestic abuse services has continued to increase. In fact, support required for the highest risk victims has stabilised and in some cases started to reduce slightly, but what we're seeing is an increase in what we call medium level risk. I've said before that any victim of domestic abuse is a high risk victim as far as we're concerned, but there are still forms of definition that we have to use. And what we've been able to do is to transfer some of our high risk officers to support those that are considered to be medium risk, which is enabling us to ensure that everybody's getting the support they need the moment they make contact with us. At 2.4.3, in relation to the coroner service, the committee will recall the annual coroner service report included a recommendation which committee sanctioned to investigate the development of our own mortuary provision. I'm pleased to say that work is now underway. A demand and sadly remains high, and there is insufficient capacity both for mortuary space and pathology in Cambridgeshire. So with Amanda Ascombe's team's support, we are now underway with investigating our own mortuary provision, and we'll report back on that in due course. And then finally, in relation to ongoing COVID work, the activity led by this committee remains as high as ever. They're incredibly busy still with managing the pandemic. The most recent lockdown that's just ended, we didn't see shielding reintroduced as before, but what we did see was a heightened set of recommendations and advice to formerly shielding residents, 32,000 people, to stay at home if they could. And so we reopened our county-wide hub for shielding people, and have been providing support until lockdown was ended this week. Demand this time was far lower than the first time round. I think that's probably because there was a fixed period of time this time. People knew it was coming to an end, and had made arrangements for their own support, but we still supported several hundred people. We proactively contacted 11,000 of the 32,000 people. They were the 11,000 people that were either new to the list since shielding was paused, or were people we were in direct contact with when shielding was paused back in August, just to make sure that they were okay. And alongside that, the hub continues to support outbreak management work. We've continued to provide marshalling at testing sites. We have been continuing to run the local hardship scheme for people who need to self-isolate but can't either afford to or have other barriers. We want there to be absolutely no reason in our county why somebody cannot self-isolate. It's one of the most important tools we have of beating the virus whilst we wait for the vaccination to reach all of our population. And we've supported our district and city council colleagues to develop their own rapid response plans. The reality today is that the numbers, the level of the infection rates in the county have fallen significantly over the last couple of weeks, and I think that's in no small part due to the leadership, this committee has demonstrated the vigour and support you've provided, and the amount of support we've been able to provide our residents in return to follow the rules, to stay at home and to stay safe. And clearly the lockdown too is thought to have helped. So a really good position to be in. We're not out of the woods yet, as I keep saying, and the hub will remain open until such time as there is no longer any need whatsoever. And we don't expect that to be for some time. We're worried about Christmas. We're worried about the post-Christmas effect. And will remain completely resolute to supporting our residents, especially the vulnerable residents we've got in our county, to stay safe. And then very finally from me at 258, I just wanted to draw your attention to the new winter grant scheme, which has now been agreed early this week by Children and People's Committee, but is very much a collaboration between the Communities and Partnerships Directorate and our Education Directorate, and builds upon the Think Communities Cambridgeshire local approach. This is the scheme that government have introduced from December the 1st to support families in particular, but also individuals who are facing particular hardship over winter and may not be able to afford food or household utility bills. And we've developed, and it's summarised at 258, I think a really innovative approach to this scheme, which will see everybody eligible for free school meals and many others automatically receive financial support during the Christmas holidays and February half term, but also a whole raft of additional support for other vulnerable people, people who just find themselves struggling, maybe for the first time in their lives because of the impact of the pandemic. And the scheme itself launches proper today and tomorrow, where every school will be contacted with details, every parent will be contacted, and we'll be issuing an awful lot of social media and other activity. And I'd be really happy to provide further details to committee or respond to any questions on that scheme as time progresses. Funding is available until the end of March initially, so a very short period of time, but I think we can have a significant impact during that time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adrian. Very comprehensive report as usual, and I'm sure members will agree these regular reports from you as Service Director provide a very good opportunity to cover a wide range of issues, and no surprising, we've got several questions. So, Councillor Ashwood, Barbara, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Adrian, yet another fantastically well-written and informative report. I read every single word of yours, and I have to say that can't always be said for some others. But I have to take issue with you with one thing, and that's Cambridgeshire Local. To me, it sounds like a range of small convenience stores scattered around the rural areas. Think Communities actually does use the word communities, and I actually like that branding. There's also the fact that a lot of our partner organisations are probably using Think Communities. They will then need to rebrand, which will take time and expense. I 100% support everything we're doing, but the change of name, I'm afraid I can't. And I would ask, when we get to the recommendations, Steve, if you would be prepared to split it and we take both recommendations separately.
Okay, Barbara, thank you.
Thank you.
The only comment I would make is, of course, Think Communities has been a very internal message that we've used, and evidence we found, particularly with the local councils conference, people had a job to grasp what Think Communities really meant. So you know, that's really where we've separated the internal discussion around Think Communities to a brand that we can then build on, so people do understand what Cambridgeshire Local means, because you know, I think it does what it says on the tin, but
I'm just not sure that they'll actually grasp the concept of Cambridgeshire Local any more than they would do Think Communities.
Okay, that's fine. Happy to take them separately, Barbara.
Thank you.
Amanda? Councillor Taylor, would you like to come in?
Thank you. Just sorting out the mute button, Chair. Thank you. We are asked to look at two things in this paper, two recommendations. One is to note and comment on the themes in the report, and then to agree logo and a rebranding. I'd like to say, first of all, to note on the key themes of the report that you are doing vital work. Thank you for the report. You're seeking to help people deal with the coronavirus outbreak. You're supporting carers, you're supporting families, you know, helping to address money problems and problems with people putting food on the table and fuel in the tank. That is vital work. When we come to the rebranding, that seems to be a big, you know, a big down from that. You know, concentrating, instead of concentrating on the vital work, looking at something like this seems to be a diversion, really. I'd like, if I may, to comment on it from a marketing point of view. Looking at the word local, on one level, if you take it as a noun, it sounds like a range of shops, as Councillor Ashwood has said, or to me, coming from Yorkshire, the local was always the pub. Neither of those are really things that we want to associate with this kind of work. If you look at it as an adjective, it's rather cold and technical. Local doesn't actually say anything about what we're doing, whereas thinking did, communities did. A word like neighbourhood would describe what you are doing in terms of bringing people together and sorting things out. From a design point of view, I worry that the word Cambridgeshire is very long. It requires an equally long word at the bottom in order to balance it out, and it will mean that it can only really be used in a horizontal landscape kind of context. I like the map and the heart very much, but I fear that, given that some of the people who are using it will perhaps be doing it on a producing things on a Riso or a photocopier, that map of Cambridgeshire could end up just being a bit of a blodge. And also the pale blue colour, while it's pretty, it's perhaps again not going to reproduce very well in black and white, which could be used quite a lot. I would like to ask you how the branding came about. Was this done internally or was it done by external consultants? If so, what was the cost of that? I think we need to know that. And also, what are your estimates for the cost of making the change to the branding in our publications, in print and online?
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just come in first, Adrian, because I would like you to answer. Thank you. Just a couple of things, Amanda. We're not changing the Cambridgeshire County Council logo. That remains the same. As Adrian said earlier, this will be used in the right context when we wish to do so. Also, the rebranding was shared with members at the workshop a month ago. So members had the opportunity to have an input into what they thought and come up with any preferred options, which some members did. And the comms team obviously arranged the branding options, and Adrian will perhaps help explain how that happened and what cost was involved. Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Taylor, and thank you for the feedback. Really do appreciate it. So we have a designer as a retained role who has provided the work here on the brand at a very low, very insignificant cost. I don't know today, sadly, what that figure is, but I can certainly let committee members know. But it's not something we commissioned separately. It's part of ongoing work that our designer provides for us as and when required throughout the year. So I'll certainly take that away as an action and make sure members are updated.
So this is an in-house designer, did I get that right?
It's sort of a retained design, so a specialist design company, but retained by the County Council to step in and provide support for us as and when required.
Right, and what is the estimated cost of making the change to the publications in which Think Communities currently appears?
Well, I'd probably say that actually where it appears currently is fairly limited. So there's an awful lot of social media and non-printed material, lots of reports and so on, but actually things like vehicles haven't been branded yet. There are no badges or anything like that we would need to replace. So So in actual fact, I think if the change is agreed, then making a change at this point is the right time to make the change before we do start to move, following the GPC investment, into real earnest delivery. So I think very insignificant.
Okay, thank you. I hope it doesn't take too much significant time, because, as I say, I do think it's a distraction from the vital work that you're doing and helping people address serious problems in their lives.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Councillor Machini, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say it's probably a sign of my inexperience, ignorance. I'm not really a graphic person. It's I wasn't expecting so much focus on the logo. I remember it coming up in front of us before. I don't remember what I said. Whatever I said, should probably be discounted. I don't have really a big problem with it. It's just that every time, I think I remember saying I prefer the other options, because every time I look at that sort of heart and map, it sort of looks to me like a maple leaf. So I think Canada. I don't know why. It's probably silly, but it's it's a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, I'm very, very happy to defer to expertise, and it doesn't really matter to me too much in relation to the work that we're doing. I'm sure it's it's all just this thing branding that it's it's very important for some things. In terms of my actual question on your report, as usual, like really, really good report, very informative. I'm so happy to be able to read it. I was just wondering, now I'm thinking about this. When did we talk about this? We talked about this at a meeting that we had, and I can't remember what meeting it was. The winter support grant, which we decided we would have reports about how that 40% that isn't free school meal vouchers would be allocated. Would this report be the place where we would look starting next time or something, or would it come under a different guise? Because I think it would be really important to put it on straight away and to see what we're doing with it. Other than that, thank you very much. Excellent report as usual. As I said, I have absolutely no problem with the logo. People more expert than me can decide whether it's good or not. But it would be quite nice for us, I think, if we could see, like, going forward at the beginning, if you're producing material that has it in it, like social media postings or adverts or whatever, to give us a round of email with 3 or 4 examples, just to give us a flavor for how it is used, which might give us better idea as to whether there's any feedback on whether it looks good or sort of fits the message that's in the communication, that kind of thing. Because at the moment, it's just, I know the concept, I know the principles, and I can see the words and the logo, but it doesn't, I don't have any reason to say good or bad in that sense. But you seeing it in use might be able to give us some more clues. So I think that might be useful if it's possible. And thank you very much for everything else.
Thanks, Elisa. Just to reiterate what I said, of course, we were all shown some examples at the workshop a month ago, so that was our opportunity to follow up and have comments and ask any questions if we wanted on that. So that's how we've arrived at where we are today. Councillor Batchelor, Henry.
Thanks. I thought Alicia had a question about winter grants.
Yes, if I might, Chair, just respond to Councillor Machini's first question, or the question, which was around the additional value that we hope to achieve from the winter support grant. So the point here is that after those eligible for free school meals are provided with the financial support from the grant, it still leaves some real opportunity to, I'm going to use the word exploit, but I don't mean that negatively at all, the partnerships that we've got across our fantastic county and that have grown so much over the last 9 months and provide lots of additional support to people that are struggling. And one of the things that was mentioned in a meeting with Councillor Machini and also at Children and People's Committee was how fantastic it would be to be able to demonstrate the impact beyond the free school meal voucher element on our people, our residents who are struggling. And I'd be really delighted to bring back a separate report or to include it in my service director report in January, whichever members would prefer, to elaborate on the numbers and take up, but also some qualitative information about the types of people that are coming forwards, the type of support that's been provided. And critically for me, because this is such a short-term fund, it's vital that we use this opportunity to enter into a relationship with people if they want to. This is not conditional on them getting help. If they want to, for us to work with them over the next months and years to help them get to a more sustainable position in their lives. That might be through our other services, such as skills and libraries, or it might be about improving their health outcomes. It might just be about making them or giving them opportunities to improve their benefits take up, whatever it might be. I think we're seeing this as a precursor to an ongoing relationship. So thank you for saying it, and I'd be really, really happy to report back in detail to this committee.
Thank you, Adrian. And as it is ongoing work, perhaps your regular report would be the place to do that, because it will obviously progress month by month. So yeah, thank you very much. So yes, thank you. Good idea, Elisa. Thank you. Councillor French, Jan.
Thank you, Chris. With regard to the logo, I can't see anything wrong with the logo. It's not, as if Adrian has said, it's not going to cost us. It's not cost a lot of money. So to be honest, I don't even think it's worth sort of having an objection to that. The report, once again, Adrian, absolutely fantastic report. I think, you know, all your staff should be exceptionally proud of what you've done over the several months, and just once again thank you, and thank all your staff for all the commitment that they have actually shown towards you know, the people of Cambridgeshire.
Thank you, Councillor French. I am absolutely blessed with the most amazing team. Just the front man. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Batchelor, your Jan's hand jumped over yours when you spoke. So Henry, over to you.
Almost skipped past me, don't worry, I'm still here. A question, Adrian, 2.5.6 in the report, which relates to the £500 that people can apply for if they've had to self-isolate, which I think they applied for through the government. Am I right in reading this section that there have been around 700 applicants in Cambridgeshire and only 2/5 of that have been approved? Am I reading that right?
You are, that's right. It's a source of some frustration, actually, that the scheme is government funded, but the administration is at district council level. So the role that the county hub has played is to try and coordinate a single response across all of our district councils, so that wherever a resident lives in Cambridgeshire, they're getting a consistent reply. The issue here is that the guidelines that come with the grant are set by government and require 2 or 3 fairly straightforward, I have to say, conditions to be met. One of those, for example, is that for somebody to benefit from the national scheme, they need a test and trace reference number. And you only get that reference number if you've had a test. You don't get that reference number if you are told to self-isolate as a result of being contacted by the app, the NHS app, because that's not connected to the national system. So what we're finding is that a lot of people aren't able to provide that reference number. That is just one of the conditions of the grant. We've got no local discretion over that. So around about 2/5 of all applicants are successful. That is the same picture nationally, and unfortunately is not within our gift to change. But what I would just say is that the county council took a decision before we knew about the national scheme to set up a local scheme of our own, fortunately, and we're able to use government grant more flexibly from a slightly different pot to support people who aren't eligible for that national scheme. And we're just starting now to promote that a bit more vigorously because of the sort of lower levels of success rate for the national scheme.
Okay, thanks. So it's test and trace living up to its usual expectations then?
I'm afraid it's, yeah, it's one of the additional weaknesses of the system, which we all know about, and you know, from whichever angle of the council chamber one comes, I think we all share the frustration. So yes,
indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Adrian. Thanks, Henry. Any other comments? Any questions for Adrian before we move to the recommendations? Okay, members. So Councillor Ashwood has asked for us to split the recommendations. Members quite happy to do that. So, recommendation A, to note and comment on the key themes discussed in the report. Is everybody happy with that recommendation? Please indicate if not, otherwise we'll take that as accepted. I see nobody indicating, thank you. So we'll move on to recommendation B, to agree the Cambridgeshire local branding and the intended use. So members, Nick, I'm going to go through. Oh, Barbara, did you want to come in, Barbara, now?
Sorry, Chair. No, I thought I was lowering my hand, but if you're going to call us individually, that's even better.
Yes, I will do. Yeah, okay, thank you. So, Nick, I'm going to just go through members. If you could just keep an account of the votes, please. So, members, I'll call your names out one at a time. If you could say for, against, or abstain. Councillor Ashwood.
Against.
Councillor Batchelor.
I'm against, Chair.
Councillor Costello.
For.
Councillor Every.
For.
Councillor French.
For.
Councillor Machini.
For.
Councillor Nieto.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
Against.
And myself, Councillor Criswell, for. So, Nick, could you please report the vote?
Thanks, Chair. That's 7 in favour and 3 against, so it's been carried.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick. So that recommendation is carried. Thank you very much, Adrian, for the report. So, members, we move on to item 8, the Cambridgeshire Skills 6-month review. Is Tanya Meadows with us? Who's Head of Adult Learning and Skills? Has Tanya joined us?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Hello, Tanya. Welcome. So, welcome, Tanya. If you'd like to present your report, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good morning, members. I've just got to start my video. Good morning, members. I'm Tanya Meadows. I'm the Head of Service for Cambridgeshire Skills, which is the Council's Adult and Community Learning Department. And thank you for the introduction, Chair. And before launching into the report, I've actually been reflecting on the last time that I presented at committee, which was December 2019, when all of our non-teaching staff were working from offices. Teachers were delivering learning in 51 physical venues across the county. And for a newly worked and reformed service, our performance was strong. We were also expecting a Ofsted to make an appearance. The planning for our 2021 academic year was almost complete. And like everybody else probably on this webinar, the pandemic was not on our radar. So if I fast forward to today, all of our non-teaching staff are predominantly working from home. Most of our teaching staff and learners are working through an online platform, and we do have a small physical amount of teaching. Our service performance remains strong, although the impact of COVID continues to be challenging. We expect the remainder of 2021 to be quite tough. Ofsted didn't arrive, so we are still expecting Ofsted in the new year. But against all of that backdrop, we've commenced our planning for the 21-22 academic year in quite an uncertain environment. And the pandemic continues to have an impact on us. So hopefully the report sufficiently highlights the way that the service has adapted to meet those challenges presented to us by COVID. So next I'd like to present you with a summary of the service's highlights. And as agreed by this committee last year, the service's continued purpose is to deliver county-wide adult education, and we do that using a range of partners and stakeholders, and that's to improve social and economic outcomes for residents in Cambridgeshire. We carry out this work from 3 main sites and 48 place-based venues, and we deliver that learning in targeted geographies. As we all know, 2020 has been a very different year, and Cambridgeshire Skills did not escape severe disruption. However, we did deliver face-to-face learning to 732 residents, up to and including the COVID lockdown on the 23rd of March, or the first lockdown. And those courses ranged from formal to informal learning. We carried out a number of basic skills programmes, which included the upskilling of maths, English, IT and ESOL. And we also developed a large range of vocational accredited courses, so courses with qualifications at the end of them to meet local needs. So as a result of that, we ran 240 classes in 51 place-based venues. And following the lockdown in March, learners were supported throughout to continue their learning wherever possible. And we also carried out a large amount of support calls. So 85% of our learners were retained. 92% of them achieved their learning goals, and 65% of those learners have progressed into something positive, which means into further educational learning, into employment, into apprenticeships, into volunteering. During this time, Cambridgeshire Skills has also worked with some local employers, and examples include GEES to upskill their workforce with their English language, the Citizens Advice Bureau. We did a range of safeguarding and financial literacy classes to their volunteers and staff. And we have worked quite heavily with the Chatteris Business Cluster, to name a few. During this year, to prepare us for our Ofsted, we carried out a mock Ofsted in February 2020, where our performance continued to be good. And critical to the success of this is strong governance, and I'm delighted to say that our governing board is now well established and has been invaluable to the development of the service. I think it's important to note that lockdown was a time to raise the bar as public servants, and during April 2020, 45% of the team was redeployed into the shielded hub. Although face-to-face learning is really quite critical to reach our target audience, we found ourselves with no venues to deliver from. So the team rapidly, but with quality in mind, wrote a range of online and blended courses to continue learning. And by January 2021, I'm delighted that we will have 55 online courses, which has created a new market for the service. We worked with our library partners to create an educational and wellbeing website for those residents who were shielding during the first lockdown. And through that, we supported over 500 residents and 6,000 hits onto the new website that we created called Open New Doors. And this collaborative initiative was between ourselves, our library partners, our adult and community learning providers in Peterborough, and also an organisation called Civic who designed the website. So we pulled together in one place a variety of activities, experiences that our residents, our shielded residents, could try whilst they were cooped up in their own homes. In addition to this, and to support our family learning initiatives, we took in a range of donated craft materials, and we donated craft packs into the community, and we distributed those to 278 individuals and families during that time. We also ran a sewing bee campaign and made over 600 scrubs bags and donated these to the NHS and to local care homes. Whilst all of that was going on, we also worked with our library partners to secure 10 free devices to connect up to the internet. So it included a data bundle that were donated to the Good Things Foundation, from the Good Things Foundation, and these were delivered as part of that Open New Doors initiative. Since that initiative, we continue under the Connecting Families contract to distribute a further 50 donated devices to families in Cambridgeshire, and this has gone some way to alleviate digital exclusion, and we are continuing to attract funding to support this. So looking forward, our service is perfectly placed to aid post-COVID social and economic recovery, and we have planned our curriculum intent around this need. And this comes in the form of reskilling those residents who now find themselves claiming universal credit and looking for work, supporting our businesses, offering higher level qualifications, enterprise and business startup programs, traineeship programs to support the 18 to 24-year-old cohort, and also increasing digital inclusion through a range of schemes, including the Connecting Families initiative that I just mentioned. The service is also working in collaboration with a range of council departments to scope the refurbishment of a former mobile library for us to use as an outreach vehicle. So that is extremely positive. Members may recall that last year the service was successful in being awarded a £400,000 capital grant to substantially refurbish March Community Centre, which is one of our bases. And this will provide us with more capacity for community and education use at that centre from April 2021. Finally, in recognition that local councillors play a critical role to adult education, and regretfully this didn't come in before I wrote the report, but the LGA has published some guidance for councillors that have the accountability of adult and community learning. So I'd be delighted to send this to Nick to circulate to members after this meeting, and I would be happy to meet with any members or have an additional meeting with the community champions. So thank you for receiving my report, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Any questions, members, for Tanya? Councillor Every, Liz.
Thank you very much, Chair. And Tanya, it's really nice to see you. Thank you for coming. And you explained so succinctly what life was like before and how it is now. And one of the things I really wanted to say was that I sit on committees and I listen to officers come and present to us, and I am amazed by the creativity and the initiatives that have been used to manage business as usual, if I may say. And of course, you've done exactly the same. So I would like to thank you for your very full report, and to commend you on the work that you have done in order to do a really difficult. At a time like this, skills is not necessarily on people's minds, is it? It's much more, I'll do that when I'm sure I'm safe. So, but I did want to just ask you one question, if I may, as to how you're going to tackle this. I've been working on the post-COVID working party at East Cambs, and one of the things we absolutely flagged up was about the reskilling of those who had become recently unemployed and so on. And we are absolutely delighted, of course, that we do have you in our ED library, so that's great. But I just wondered, this is a really difficult task to do, and I wondered how you were going to be able to engage with these people. It's a very difficult situation for people to find themselves in, very raw and well, very difficult. So I just wondered whether you had thought yet of the plan of how you're going to do that, or if indeed you could have a meeting outside this about how you're going to do it in our area, not obviously here, but yeah, how are you going to do this? Because I do think this is something that's going to grow over the next few months and hit us quite hard.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback, Councillor Every. That's really reassuring to hear, and thank you for the question. Yes, again, it's a difficult backdrop, isn't it? But we've already started to have exploration conversations with district councils, so I'd be welcome to have a meeting with yourselves. to very much look at how we can support those people that now find themselves on universal credit. So to give you an example, in Huntingdonshire, there's 2,500 people. That's been the increase to the universal credit claimants. And worst case scenarios, there could be up to 9,500 people. So what we have been able to negotiate with some carry-in funding from last year, and just got the nod from our governing board to be able to proceed with this approach, is to work with our district partners at that local level and with other partners such as the DWP to support the layers of people that there may be out there searching for work. So to give you an example of that, it may be that, we've got somebody that presents themselves as highly employable, and they probably need a couple of nips and tucks in terms of their interview skills and technique, and they will go off and they will get a job. Then we've probably got a set of people that are reasonably well skilled, but they're now finding themselves in a market where there are hundreds of applicants to one particular job. So therefore they're being overlooked, and it may take them a little bit longer to find work. So that's where we can come in and we can look at the opportunities that are available, working with our employers to signpost them into those jobs. And just to give you an example of how effective this can be, Councillor Every, we have been working with Sodexo recently, and we set up something called a sector-based work academy. And they had vacancies, so we put on some training that they asked us to bespoke to their organisation, and as a result of that, 83% of those attendees have now got work within that organisation. So it's really joining the skills and the opportunity dots. But then the other thing that we have to recognise is there may be those people who it's going to take them some time to actually find work, probably those who are quite low skilled, low paid. And what we don't want them to do is for their mental health to suffer, for them to feel worthless. So we want to put programmes to keep people work ready. So perhaps that's by offering them some volunteering opportunities, which is a really good way in order to get people into work. So it's quite embryonic, that work at the moment, reasonably well developed in Huntingdonshire. And once we have got that proof of concept, we very much want to roll that out into other districts.
Oh, that's great, because it's a really difficult area. I can understand, as I said, skills is not always on everybody's mind, and the more that we can get, the quicker we can get people back into jobs that they really want to do, that obviously the better for everybody. I would very much welcome the opportunity to meet outside this meeting for East Cams and just see, what I could do to help in any way. Okay, thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Tanya. So, Councillor French, Jan.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, Tanya. Oh, once again, great work that you're doing. Can I ask you, with the Further Education Centre at March, is that still on time with the shutdowns we've had for being redone?
Yes, again, thank you for the question. And we have had delays. There's no doubt about that. The work should be done and dusted by now. But the work is going out to tender as we speak, and a contractor will be appointed, and work will start in the region of the middle of January to the beginning of February. It's approximately 8 weeks work, and so we will be able to complete those refurbishment works within the time that we've got to spend the European grant.
Oh, that's absolutely great. I'm going to point this one at Adrian. Beside the Further Education Centre, there's a little bit of ground that we've got volunteers wanting to clean that up. So can we have a conversation, Adrian, please?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Councillor French. I'm aware of the land, and in fact, we've agreed provisionally with our property colleagues to issue a licence to the community group that wants to do something with it, which is a fantastic offer and generous offer. If Nick can capture an action for me, I'll make sure that that's followed up and we'll report back to committee. Not because although it is a local issue, actually this is a great example of community action responding to a piece of land that, at the moment serves no real purpose. So
yeah, well, Kerry Tonk has all the information on the actual group.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And well done, Tanya. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Jan. It's Councillor Nieto next. Lena.
Thank you, Chair. Tanya, thank you so much for all the work that you have been doing and for the report presented. I just wanted to ask you, what are our links with the job centres, and how do we, is there an opportunity there for the work that you're trying to do?
Again, thank you very much. Really good question. And I'm delighted to say that the job centres are one of our main partners that we work with. We've got an exceptional relationship with the DWP. And at the moment, because many services are still working in a remote fashion, and that includes the DWP, it does make people a little bit not accessible. So what we have agreed with the DWP, and we have been rolling this out since August, is that we are live streaming some employability classes to their clients. And that employability classes just doesn't cover, interview skills. It's, how to interview in a post-lockdown world where the law of averages, it's going to be like this, it's going to be electronic. And it's also about identifying the transferable skills that somebody may have, because there's probably a few vacancies in the area of their expertise. So what other skills do they have to put forward for other jobs? So that's really successful. We're running weekly live stream classes with our DW partners right the way across the patch.
Thank you, Tanya. If I can just follow up, if that's okay. Tanya, so I have come across, friends that are using the service, and one of the things that they have highlighted is that the job centers, they just when they send out emails, they just tend to do emails to everybody. It's not targeted. So I think there is an opportunity to maybe work closer with them to make sure that we tailor the services to the individuals that are really going to make the most of it, instead of just sending the same type of information to every single person that it is just not of use to them.
Again, thank you for that comment. Hopefully it will give you a degree of reassurance that we do work with the job centre at advisor level. So we do feel quite confident that they are referring people into the live streaming service in a targeted manner, but perhaps we can talk to the advisors to further target that down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, members, or comments for Tanya? I see nobody indicating. So thank you very much, Tanya, for presenting. We know it's been a challenging time and you've risen to that challenge, and I think we've done the best we can in the circumstances, haven't we? So look forward to a brighter future next year, hopefully we're delivering skills face to face. So thank you very much for your report. And members, we move to the recommendations. We're being asked to note the progress of the service operating as Cambridgeshire Skills, comment on the ways the service has adapted to the ongoing impacts caused by the pandemic, and suggest any additional opportunities for the service to explore that will help meet the council's objective and support our communities. So I hope members are all happy to take those on block. If anybody has any objections, please show. If not, we'll take those as read. I see nobody raising their hand, so thank you very much, everybody. We'll take those recommendations as approved. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Tanya.
Thank you very much.
So, members, we now move on to item 9, which is the Innovate and Cultivate Fund endorsement of recommendations. And due to the short period of time between the panel meeting and the agenda publication, I've accepted this as a late report, which was published on the 1st of December 2020. So report to be presented by Elaine Matthews. Over to you, Elaine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hello again, everybody. So you have before you, as Chair explained, a late report for you. I know you're all very, very familiar and actually indeed very actively involved with the Innovate and Cultivate Fund. So I won't go over the background, which is quite clearly stated for you at section 1 of the paper. I know you all know this off by heart now. I will skip to really talking about the outcome of the panel. We only met earlier this week on Monday, and this paper is to bring you the outcome of that recommendation panel. We invited applicants who'd already been successful with their stage 1 project plans to come and meet with us on Monday and talk through their far more detailed project plans, including finance management and also their intended targets, intended impact and outcome as a result of their project. And I'm really pleased to say that the outcome of the panel was to recommend 8 applications for Innovate funding to you today. The detail of those 8 applications has been shown for you in Appendix 1 of this report. So again, I won't run through all of it, but to give you a flavour of the projects that we'd like to recommend and also their main purpose, I will just briefly go over with you each one of those 8 projects. So the first project we considered was called A Mindful Pause. And A Mindful Pause is a project that will provide emotional and mental health support to young people aged 13 to 25, including those from disadvantaged and/or complex families. Service will be community-based in Huntingdon and will develop resilience within those young people who would otherwise require support from young people workers, family workers, and/or social workers. The interventions have been very much developed based on the feedback from young people, who already report that some of the current services available to them can seem a bit formal, which often creates a barrier to them accessing that support. As with all of the 8 applications that we considered this week, this project was strongly supported by the service leads, and our service leads have worked very closely with the applicants throughout the process to help them develop their project plan and their funding requests. The second application that the panel heard this week was Caring Together. This is a project that will set up dedicated and specialist carers counselling service in Cambridgeshire to better support carers' mental health and prevent carer crisis and carer breakdown. This very strongly aligns to our own Think Community's priorities for carers and really complements the work that we've been seeing through COVID, where carers just need that support. And the panel again felt this was a very strong application and also strongly supported by the service leads. The Centre 33 application their project is to provide a guided self-help support programme that supports siblings of young people who are known to early help, youth offending or education officers. The support offered is particularly effective with young people who are exhibiting behavioural difficulties, so anxiety, fears, mild or moderate low mood, panic disorder and agoraphobia, but also simple phobia, sleep problems and stress management. Again, a lot more detail on this project is shown for you in Appendix 1, and I would urge you to read through that if you haven't already done so. But in short, this one-year project expects to work with 70 young people from across Cambridgeshire and was also very strongly supported by our service leads who work closely with them and will continue to do so whilst this project is delivered. The Connected Lives project is to establish a Cambridgeshire hub of connected lives, which will offer evidence-based interventions to families before crisis. So in particular, they're looking to intervene early to reduce the number of families that need to access higher level services, for example, with the social care provision. It's going to widen access to families in Trumpington and deliver new groups across the county in areas with the highest number of cases already open to early help and social care involvement. And these will be agreed with the county council teams and service leads. The next project we heard from was KIC, which is the KIC Siblings Project. And this is to provide therapeutic support and a prevention group for young people who are the siblings of young offenders and increased risk of criminal exploitation or entering the criminal justice system themselves. The group will take place in Oxmoor area of Huntingdon, where there's currently a gap in provision for siblings of young offenders in that area who might be at risk of that criminal exploitation from a very young age. So due to their family issues, their family circumstances, it is often recognised that these young people do need a higher level of intervention at that young age compared to their peers, and they will have a greater need for services as they get older. By taking part in this project, the young people will have the opportunity to work towards an ASDAN short course in activities and receive certification on completion of that. Again, very strongly supported by the service leads who will continue to work with these organisations as they deliver their projects throughout the period. Our next application was from Littleport Parish Council, and they met with us and talked very passionately about their desire to create a wellbeing team within the Parish Council and trial a part-time community link worker position who will work with the elderly residents for a 2-year period. The community link worker will focus on their older residents, but also work with partner agencies to offer support and advice, and be a linchpin to enabling partner agencies to channel information to the right place within those communities. It's about creating more opportunities for older residents and, where appropriate, carers to engage in activities within the community. The project's really aiming to help elder residents and carers to access a trusted person within their community who can support them, to increase their networks and access transportation via the voluntary car scheme or other, and reduce loneliness and isolation. Their ambition is also to increase physical activity with that cohort and just improve the general well-being. Again, strongly supported by our officers, and it looks to be a really good project, absolutely in line with, I think, community's priorities. The next project that we heard from was the Red Hen project, where they're looking to provide intensive early help support in North Cambridge to vulnerable families with children aged 3 to 11 years. They'll be doing that through one-to-ones, group and community-based support in order to prevent further escalation into services. The project is looking to build the resilience and capacity of those parents to safeguard their children, to strengthen their relationships within their family unit, but also to effectively deal with the many challenges that they face. We know those families often have complex needs, and the support will focus on a number of key issues, including parenting, child development, mental health, but also housing, benefits, debt, domestic abuse, food poverty, relationship breakdown, looking at the family as a whole. It will provide drop-in facilities, which includes breakfasts. It'll address food poverty and create volunteering opportunities for those parents to improve their confidence and their basic skills. And then the last project that we heard from at our recommendation panel came from St Ives Town Council. And this is a project that's building on the legacy of Camden Council's Neighbourhood Cares pilot, which took place in St Ives. And also bringing in the St Ives Community Hub that was formed in response to the pandemic. So this project, which is led by the Town Council, aims to establish more substantial provision to strengthening community resilience and provide support for adults most at risk of loneliness or isolation, or who may just benefit from being more connected within their community. The project aims to recruit community volunteers directly into the model, therefore building capacity in a way that Neighbourhood Cares was not able to do at that time. So in conclusion, should the committee be minded to agree all of those 8 Innovate applications, you will note that at paragraph 2.3, we set out the funding that has been committed to date. So before to date, the total amount of funding committed is just over 1.3 million for 60 projects through the Innovate and Cultivate Fund, which is a remarkable achievement and something that we're very proud of in my team. If the Innovate applications today go through, then the total committed will be up to £1,685,748. I'll start again. £1,685,748. Such a big figure. That is a remarkable achievement for our communities, and I leave that with you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Any questions for Elaine, members? Councillor Every, Liz?
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to say, having sat through this session, I was really impressed with the quality of applications that we've got. Getting to stage 2 is not easy. Trying to demonstrate that you're going to save the county council money, because obviously this money's come from reserves, is not an easy thing to do. And I personally felt that they really nailed it, all of them. They did such a great job, and obviously you see our recommendations before you. But I was not going to ask a question, but I just wanted to pass on our thanks to you and to all the team, the staff team, obviously team that work on this, because it's a very rigorous and thorough process, and the support that is given to those people who've made applications, whether they're successful or not, is really good. And I think there are a lot of people out there who are much more successful at writing bids now because of this process than they would have been, and have been successful getting money from elsewhere. So I would like to thank you all, Elaine, if you pass on that thanks to Leanne, and also all the service leads who support. It's been a very effective process, and there are a lot of people out there who are very happy that they've now going to get the funding to do the things they want to do in their communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Machini, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely everything that Liz just said. A bit of a marathon of a meeting on Monday, but beautifully timed, beautifully chaired. So fantastic work to Elaine and all of the people that have supported, and obviously Leanne as well, for all the work that they have done. It's very good to be able to actually get through business as well as we did. These bids are just fantastic. I'm very enthusiastic about all of them, and can I please plead with the committee that we should be mindful of what we have achieved with this fund over the last 4 years, and I think we should try very much to protect this fund as much as we possibly can in the face of what awaits us in the budget next year. We really should remember what this is doing and how important this will be down the line. But absolutely, totally behind this.
Thank you, Elisa. Councillor Batchelor, Henry.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say, yeah, I'll be fully supporting the recommendations in front of us today and of the panel, but more just a note for you, Chair, just to give my apologies. I have to leave the meeting after this item, so I won't be here for the rest, but just letting you know.
Okay, thank you very much, Henry. So thank you for being here when you can. Thank you. So no further questions, members. Something's just occurred to me. We're intending to progress with the Cultivate Fund, and I did mention at the workshop a month ago that the suggestion is that the Cultivate Fund previously has had an upper ceiling of 19,000. We're proposing to progress with the Cultivate Fund for 2,000 to 15,000 pounds, as outlined in 1.4, and I did say we'd officially endorse that at this meeting. So on the basis that nobody at the workshop had any objection to that, that's the way we're proposing to go forward. As we know, funding is going to be very tight, and we'd like to support as many communities as possible and make this money go as far as possible. So the suggestion was that Cultivate funding, as we progress, will be 2,000 to 15,000 pounds. So I'd just like to add a second recommendation that we endorse that situation, that it will be a £15,000 limit for the Cultivate Fund. So that will be agenda item B, and happy to take any comments when we get to that if anybody has any. But the recommendations we already have before us, members, are to agree to fund the following 8 applications through the Innovate funding stream. That's Mindful Pause, Caring Together, Centre 33, Connected Lives, KIC, Littleport Parish Council, Red Hen Project, and St Ives Town Council. So if anybody has any objections, would they please show? I know you've all been very supportive of this initiative. So nobody showing. Thank you very much indeed. So we'll take those recommendations as approved. And just that further recommendation, members, if, as I say, if you refer to 1.4, the Cultivate grants in future to be 2,000 to 15,000. Does anybody have any comments on that or objections? Because I feel we just ought to officially endorse that. Nobody showing. Okay, thank you very much. So thank you, Nick. If you just add that recommendation and committee's approval, I'd be grateful. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, members. Thank you, Elaine. We move on to item 10, which is the Communities and Partnership Committee review of draft revenue and capital business planning proposals. The report was published on the 27th of November and circulated electronically to members of the committee. I accepted this as a late report for consideration at today's meeting on the following grounds. Reason for lateness: the delay has been the result of needing to collate and analyse the most up-to-date financial, local and national data sets in order to enable the committee to have the best possible discussion on the current position and future opportunities. And the reason for urgency: to enable the committee's views to be available to the General Purposes Committee when it reviews the budget proposals on the 22nd of December 2020. This report contains an appendix which is exempt from publication under the paragraph 3, part 1, Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, in that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed. Information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information, and if members of the committee wish to discuss that information contained in the appendix, we will need to consider whether to go into private session. So do any members want to discuss that exempt appendix? Just for clarity, members, this is around the capital projects where the budget the total budget is exposed, and it could be obviously commercially sensitive to any businesses that may tender for that work. So that's the reason in a nutshell. So if anybody would like to discuss that appendix, we need to know now, please, in which case we'll go into private session. I see nobody showing. Thank you very much. And of course, members have access to officers outside the meeting if they want to follow up on any issues. So as nobody's indicated, we'll progress on the understanding that we won't be discussing that confidential appendix. And we have Adrian Chapman is being joined by Emma Jones, our Senior Finance Business Partner. So welcome again, Adrian. And Emma, who's going to start the presentation off, please?
If I just introduce, Chair, thank you very much, and thanks Emma for joining. As always, in the December round of committees, what you have before you is the full set of business proposals, and the bulk of the report sets out the overall financial position for the council. I'll perhaps ask Emma to elaborate on some of that context, and then I'll just briefly cover the proposal for this committee, and particularly draw your attention though to the section with the tables in it, part 4 of the committee report, which does take you straight down into the numbers, particularly table 4.4. But Emma, I don't know if you could just perhaps provide a little more context to the overall financial position.
Yes, absolutely. So we were here in October, and I think we had a gap of about 32.8 million. And we were saying at the time it was one of the most challenging business planning processes we've been through. I think that very much still stands, but since October across the council, we've managed to make quite a lot of progress, and that gap has reduced from 32.8 million to 20.8 million, so an improvement of 12 million. Some of that is through the identification of additional savings. Some of that is around new things that we know. So things like we now know we might get some additional funding in from government that we didn't know about before, or we can just improve some of our assumptions. So that has improved the position. Obviously, we've still got a £20.8 million gap, which we're going to need to work through over the coming months, but the position has definitely improved. I suppose within that, and I think Adrian will talk about this one a little bit more, But within communities and partnerships, we've added in a saving called a communities and partnership review. And the idea of that one is just to dig into areas where we know there's not a huge amount of saving to be found, but we know there's a bit of an efficiency there. And actually, if we identify all of those and pull them together in one saving, that 200k is not an insignificant amount of money. So yeah, I suppose that can be, we're working that over the next couple of months. With a view to having that finalised in February. I think that's probably much of the update, unless there's anything else you wanted to add, Adrian.
Thank you, Emma. Just to draw committee's attention then to section 7 and 8, which is the specific narrative for this committee. So section 7 just sets the context. And although 200,000, as Emma says, is not an insignificant sum, some might think we could do better. And we have to remember that we don't have the scale of budgets that some other committees have available to us. But also that actually our really vital work on Think Communities, the Cambridgeshire local approach, is designed to support a lot of the pressures and demand increases that other committees are facing, particularly adults and children's services. So I feel £200,000 is a good gesture to make. As Emma's described, the review is very much a desk-based review. We believe that because we've grown as a directorate over the last couple of years, there's opportunities to look at historical underspends to ensure all of our service and support costs, proportionate vacancy savings have been captured, and also that we just want to take a bit of time looking at our income levels and making sure that we're maximising those as far as we can. So that's our only proposition to make. There's an update at section 10 on the capital programme. This committee has some capital budget, and a reminder at 10.7 that the Community Capital Fund, which was hugely successful, the £5 million fund, will be reporting back on an update on how that money has been spent and progress of projects early in the new year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adrian. Councillor Machini, Elisa.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. One is a general one on the main report, and the other one is on Adrian's specific paper. So the general question is, I'm trying to understand exactly. I'm going to try and make it sound not bad, because obviously it's no one's fault that we are where we are. I'm trying to understand just how badly out of date this report is. I'm really sorry for saying it like this. The reason I'm saying it is that we still have, this report is vaguely familiar to me. I've seen iterations of it before, and I'm going to section 5 where the assumptions and risks still basically describe how this was composed prior to the now I can't remember what it's called, the spending review, which was on the 25th of November. Government will announce the results of a one-year spending review on 25th of November. This will set various things, which have now been set. Obviously, it's been like a week, so it's not really very long. But I'm effectively looking for confirmation that this picture is pre-25th of November and not post, because we have heard from Chris Mallion, and I expect that we will hear more about certain things that will have an impact, including more money for highways, more money for social care, a freeze on local government pay, a difference in what we expected in terms of the national living wage, all of these things, which do not appear to have been incorporated in this. So I'm just effectively looking for confirmation that we're still awaiting revision of the papers following that. So that's my question. The second question, to effectively, I think, presumably to Adrian. Obviously, I completely appreciate that we're still looking at this. So I'm trying, because we in the recommendations we're asked to endorse this. Once again, please don't take it badly, because I know it's not your fault, but there doesn't seem to be an enormous amount of substance to endorse. Obviously £200,000 isn't a huge amount of money, because that is proportionate to our budgeting remit in this committee. That's absolutely understood. I absolutely support in principle the idea that we should look for savings that will not affect the delivery of services. This is repeated in the report. I welcome it. I think it's a very good thing. Still, and therefore in principle, I would like to endorse it. Still, it's, you know, it does mention sort of like teasers about things we might look at, and it doesn't really explain what's going to happen. So, you know, things like, you know, maximizing the income in the registration service sounds very good. Cost reduction and income generation in the library service, I would really like a bit more detail on that. So, I mean, I suppose I will endorse this in principle, but I do have some concerns about the lack of detail at this point. Once again, not, you know, I'm not saying it's your fault, but you do understand where I'm coming from. So I'd like, you know, if anything we know, if we could hear about it at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. And just to say from the chair, I would expect any change in services to come back to this committee. So I don't think there's any sleight of hand here at all. So Adrian, would you like to come in?
Yes, so just to deal with the second point first, if I might, I completely echo the chair's comment there, and I do apologise for the brevity of the document. Just for absolute avoidance of doubt, there are no service reductions, no staff reductions hidden within that £200,000. And we've got a very high level of confidence that the £200,000 can be achieved by simply reviewing, effectively tidying up an awful lot of legacy related issues and several years worth of financial benefit that we've achieved, overachievement of income, for example, or not necessarily spending as much on some budget lines. And it's really a desk-based review to scoop all of that up, as Emma described, into a single coherent amount of saving. So I'm probably not giving you a great deal of reassurance, but I do just want to make it really clear that there are no service impacts and no staffing impacts as part of that £200,000. We've always overachieved until this year on our income in registration services, and every indication after next year, we do expect there to be a dip next year because of the ongoing pandemic, but beyond that, we expect our registration service to continue to outperform, and it's only right, therefore, that we try and forecast a more appropriate income target to achieve, and that doesn't require any significant service change, except a more realistic income target. Similarly, with our library service, we've never before, for example, linked our library service up to our skills service and use some of that skills budget to pay for room hire, which is a perfectly legitimate use of the adult skills budget, which comes from government to help support our library service income target. So there are a couple of examples of the sorts of things that the proposals seek to achieve. And of course, we can ensure that members are kept informed as the work progresses. It will be done at pace, assuming it's agreed today, in order for a greater position of guarantee for February full council. And in response to the pre-spending, the information in here about the spending review, yes, the detail following spending review, as always, is still awaited. And whilst the principles are set out in the report, the numbers don't yet reflect the granularity in, I think in all cases, Emma, of the spending review decisions, because we await the guidance and the finer detail.
Thank you, Adrian. And perhaps you could confirm, I did ask for the text to say up to £200,000 because, yes, we want to be ambitious with our target, but if we find that reaching that target would hinder us progressing with our ambitious agenda, then we would row back from that rather than risk service delivery. So it's a figure we aspire to, and we'll see how we get there. So, okay, any further questions, members?
Can I just ask a very quick follow-up?
Yes, you can.
Sorry, Chairman. Thank you very much for that reassurance. I do not suspect any sleight of hand. I mean, I hope we all know better than that. It's just, you know, like the principle of endorsing something that you think you know what it's going to look like, but sort of not. I mean, it's the reason we are in such a sort of, you know, all this uncertainty. It's not because of anything we've done or anything like that, and therefore I have absolutely no problem. It's just, you know, we do have to be quite clear, especially with the public, what we're doing. So can I ask for two things? So number one, are we gonna get a more detailed version of this paper at a following meeting, where we see a bit more of what this £200,000 savings are gonna look like? for our curiosity, for transparency, for, you know, good order, these kind of things. And second question, I am presuming that the numbers having been, with regard to the main report, the numbers having been updated when we know what we can update, we will see them on the 22nd of December at GPC. I don't know what's it called. Yes, GPC. Is that the intention?
Thank you, Elisa. So can we just confirm those 2 points, please, Adrian or Emma?
Yes, certainly. I'll perhaps ask Emma to respond to point 2, if that's okay. But on the first point, yes, absolutely. Very happy to bring you the detail in January. We may not quite have fully completed the exercise by then, with Christmas in the way, but we'll do our very best. And certainly we can bring you at least our intention in January, even if we haven't concluded the work. So, and we'll continue to do that until we've fully exposed the opportunity. So yes, thank you, definitely. And the GPC comment, Emma?
I'm not sure, I'm afraid, on the GPC comment, but I can check with some corporate colleagues after this and get back to you outside of the meeting.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, that is my impression, that we would have the papers revised based on the spending review in time for GPC on the 22nd of December. It would be good to have confirmation of that. Just because the paper looks like a general paper, you know, it's come to our committee, it's going to come to every committee. But that's basically where. So, and thank you very much for indulging me in all these questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. And yes, I'm with you. I'm expecting that we'll see the very latest information when we meet at GPC later on in December. So hopefully we'll have all the information by then. Thank you. Okay, members, so no further questions. So we move to the recommendations. Are members happy to take all the recommendations en bloc? Are there any objections to recommendations? Councillor Ashwood.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like a recorded vote on it, please.
Okay, thank you. So you don't want to take. There will be some objections, will there, Amanda? I mean, Barbara.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So we'll go to a vote then, and if happy with the recorded vote, if that's what members would like. So members, we can see the recommendations. To note the progress made to date and next steps required to develop the business plan for 2021 to 2026. Note the impact of COVID-19 on the Council's financial planning. Endorse the budget and savings proposals that are within the remit of the committee as part of the consideration of the Council's overall business plan. Endorse the changes to the capital programme that are within the remit of the committee as part of consideration of the Council's overall business plan. And to note the updates of fees and charges for 2021-22. So they're the recommendations, members. I'll read out names, please. If you could say for, against, or abstain. Councillor Ashwood.
Abstain.
Councillor Batchelor.
Gone. You left the meeting.
Councillor Batchelor's left. Yes, sorry, I do recall that. Councillor Costello.
For.
Councillor Every.
For.
Councillor French.
For.
Councillor Machini.
For.
Councillor Nieto.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Taylor. Is Councillor Taylor still with us?
I am. Sorry, I had myself on mute. Abstain, Chair.
Thank you. And myself, Councillor Criswell, for. So Nick, could you please give us the outcome of that vote?
Thank you, Chair. That's 7 votes in favour and 2 abstentions. So the motion's carried.
Thank you very much. Those recommendations carried then, members. Thank you very much. So thank you. And we move on to item 12, the Finance Monitoring Report. And Emma's still with us. Thank you, Emma. If you'd like to present that, thank you.
So you've got in front of you the Finance Monitoring Report for the whole of people and communities, along with the covering reports, just looking at the areas in your responsibility. As I say, it covers all of people and communities, and it is telling you what is going on until the end of October 2020, at which point people and communities are forecasting an overspend of 12.1 million, the majority of which relates to COVID-19 pressures, and 2.3 million of which relates to services within your remit. The key variances within that: Think Communities is forecasting a 1.4 million pressure, and this relates to various aspects of the COVID-19 response, including the hub. And I know Adrian has been keeping you very well up to date about what work is going on there. We're also seeing a pressure across both the registration service and the public library service as a result of lost income. In libraries, this is due to the closure of the library buildings over the course of the year, and in registrations, it's due to the restrictions around ceremonies. We're also anticipating a smaller pressure on the coroner service as a result of the increased cost of postmortems where COVID-19 is suspected. I know the full FMR report is quite sizable, and that is just quite a quick summary of the bits that are relevant to you. Is there any questions on the back of that?
Thank you, Emma. I'm sure members have had time to digest. As you say, there's quite a lot in there with the additional report. So any questions, members, for Emma? No, obviously self-explanatory, Emma. Thank you very much. So if there's no questions, we're being asked to review and comment on the report. Are members happy that they've done that? If not, please show. Nobody showing. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
So members, we move on to item 13.
Sorry, Chairman. Oh. If I may, I believe we missed an item. The performance report.
Have I rushed forward?
Item 11, Chair.
Item 11. I went straight to item 12. Did I? Sorry, too much of a hurry. Obviously, my fault. Oh yes. Yes, apologies everybody. So it's the performance report, item 11, performance report quarter 2, 2020-21, and Tom Barden. Apologies, Tom, if you're with us.
No problem, Chair. I'm very happy to. I'll take you through it as quickly as I can, so you can move on. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the performance report containing the latest data available up to the end of September 2020, and it contains information where there is quantitative information about the services that are overseen by this committee. If I just mention a couple of sort of key points coming forward from this report. So it's true to say that all indicators in here have been affected by COVID and the economic and social restrictions that have taken place as part of pandemic management. Generally, what we see is that activity numbers are down. For example, in libraries, the social restrictions and the libraries being closed have obviously affected visitor numbers and the numbers of loans, but the service has moved to doing online events. And actually, if you look in terms of events attendance, then that has increased very sharply over that period by making that move. We see learner registrations below where they were in the same point last year, but good retention and achievement performance for learners who were already enrolled. And we see trading standards figures around interventions and rogue traders down slightly. Unfortunately, hate crime incidents have increased into Q2. When we look at educational attainment data, we've only just received this year's education attainment data, and obviously because of the disruption to the exams taken over the summer, then it's come in a very different format to what it usually does. So we're just reviewing that to see whether we can make use of it in terms of updating these indicators that should be coming forward, if possible, in the next report. We're seeing more referrals to the domestic violence advocacy service, but a steady repeat rate at the moment. Patterns of referrals to the perpetrator panel have been affected because of the August panel did not take place. The last set of indicators I wanted to mention in here around employment, as reported by the OBR just last week. Across the country, we're expecting a very significant impact to the economy and labour market as a result of the social and economic restrictions. At the moment, some of that impact is being mitigated by the employment support schemes, but not all of it. And we do expect further impact once those schemes end in March. We have seen locally in Cambridgeshire the percentage of the economically active population who are accessing universal credit increase by some very large amounts, but the full impact of that is yet to be seen. The indicator that we use here is a survey indicator, which is hampered by the current restrictions, and it's based on a rolling 12-month average. So it's not as sensitive to those labour market changes as things like the count of the number of people who are accessing universal credit. But nevertheless, I expect to see some impact here, and we can provide more information on impacts on the labour market if that is required by the committee. Very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Tom. A lot of information in there, members. Have you any questions or comments for Tom? Adrian, you wish to come in, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks, Tom. Members, Tom rightly drew attention to the increase in hate crime. So pages 177 and 178, I think, just to, first of all, to say that the actual count itself isn't significantly huge. It is nevertheless an upward trend. So with your agreement, we'll make sure we include in a January Service Director report a slightly deeper dive into that trend and a bit more of an analysis around the profile of those hate crimes and what we're doing about it. Because I think that rather does jump out from the report overall. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Adrian. And I'm aware this is something that Councillor Nieto is also keenly looking into. So thank you very much for that. So any other comments, members? For Tom, any questions? Okay, I see nobody indicating. So we just move to the recommendations, members, to note and comment on the performance information and suggest or recommend any remedial actions as necessary. Are we happy we've done so, members? Please indicate. If not, otherwise we'll take the recommendations as approved. Nobody indicating, thank you very much. So we'll take those recommendations as approved, thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. So having already jumped ahead of myself, we've done item 12, so we move straight on to item 13, which is updates from community champions. Do community champions have anything they wish to orally update the committee with? Please show if you do. Councillor French, Jan.
Thanks, Steve. Obviously, we're very restricted to what we have been able to do, but the internet has been fantastic. At one of our last, I think it was at one of our workshops, it was introduced by Madcap, who is an organisation which includes Panini's 2020 Productions, the Food Bank, and there's a fourth one I can't remember. I'll think of it in a minute. I mean, over the Christmas period, T-Chat, which is youngsters, and I do mean youngsters, teenagers who started this up a couple of years ago, actually cooking meals on a Sunday at the local church. It was their idea. They managed to get a grant, I believe, probably from County to do the kitchen up several years ago. Anyway, over the Christmas period, they will be holding 3-4 sittings of meals. I think Sunday was the first time they started, and that will go into Christmas. So that's what the youngsters are doing. Between 2020 Productions, who are doing gifts and parcels, Panini's are going to cook over 500 meals. They will be frozen because then there will be quite a job to get them delivered either the week of Christmas or Christmas Day. So there's, and obviously the food bank have been heavily involved. As usual, they don't have any money. So I went begging to some of the local communities. I managed to get £500 out of March Town Council, £500 from my own committee, which is March events. We didn't hold a St George or a Christmas fair, so we felt it was only right we should contribute towards that. The mayor, my daughter, she gave £200. I gave £200. And this morning I had a phone call. Oh, sorry, a resident gave £200, and a telephone call this morning to tell me that there was another £100 on the way from one of the parish councils, Wisbech St Mary. So absolutely delighted on that. We have a new baby bank that is opened up. It's open on a Tuesday and a Friday. It's organised by individuals and volunteers. They're running out of St. Peter's Church at the moment. They're there Tuesdays and Fridays. I hope to go along and see what they're doing. They haven't got any money, but I understand the donations that are coming in, whether it's equipment or baby clothes, etc. So I hope that's successful. I hope that's something that hopefully in the future we may be able to give some kind of grant. But certainly it's been working well. The grubs that I was growing grubs, I can't remember the proper name of it. The young lady, she set up our committee, our constitution, bank accounts and everything else. I'm working with Kerry Tonks on that. The piece of land that, one of the pieces of land that I would like to secure for them, as we spoke to Adrian earlier about that, is the side of the FE Centre, which is just overgrown. There is another section of land between the bypass. Well, there's actually two sections. I found another one yesterday. They actually belong to Fenland District Council, but there's a bit confusion where the Marchtown Council have actually got lease on them, but it actually splits where the bypass goes. When the bypass was put in many years ago, the land was divided. So I'm doing some checks on that. Then I've had a lady been making masks throughout the summer, which has been absolutely fantastic. She keeps dropping 50s and 100s off at a time. I managed to sell some of them, and then when it came to Amnesty, I asked if we could have some poppy ones, and she made about 150 of them. So between all the masks that were sold, I think it was about £200–300 went to the British Legion, because obviously they couldn't do the normal collections. 1st of December, there was a testing centre set up in the City Road car park. I didn't go down, but I understand it was queues long, and FDC opened the leisure centre just in case people did need to use facilities. And I think that's about it.
Excellent, thank you very much, Jan.
Yeah, I'll post it to you, Nick.
Okay, thank you. Yes, if you could provide Nick with a written report, that'd be great. Thank you. Any questions for Jan? Okay, thank you. We move to Councillor Machini. Elisa.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to really take this opportunity to record my thanks to Cambridge City Council for all the work that they've done with the hubs over this winter and all the families that they have fed. So I continue to work with them on that. They are currently going through them, well, I should say motions. It's kind of a slight turmoil. The long-standing chief executive officer has left. Incredibly enough, people still have a right to their retirement, even in these times. She will be sorely, sorely missed, and they are in the process of getting her replacement up and running, which is delaying slightly some things that I've been hoping to be able to do with their officers in the communities department, which we will try and make sure we get those meetings up and running as early as possible in January. I've been working with Paul Connolly on that. He's a fantastic place coordinator. Is that his job title? I get confused. Whatever he's doing, it's absolutely fantastic. He has an incredible experience in working in Cambridge City, and we look forward to actually working together and making sure that we start projects and things that Cambridge City actually want and that fit with the machinery that they've got in place. Paul's been really quite resourceful. He started a couple of events that will be taking place in a couple of areas in Cambridge, which we will see how they go. We've got local resident associations that are quite keen in some parts of the city, but I am extremely keen that we discuss the best possible way to achieve impact everywhere, including in places where these events aren't the natural way that we would connect with people. And that's something that I would hope we would be able to get as much impact as possible from Debbie Kay and her team. So I continue to work on that, and I will update you in the new year.
Thank you, Elisa. And I think it already shows how valuable the work of the area coordinators will be. And I know Paul has said he's working with you, Elisa, so that's great. Thank you very much. Any questions for Elisa? Otherwise, thank you, Elisa. We move on to Councillor Every. Liz.
Thank you, Chair. I've sent my report through, but just a couple of things I just wanted to add, that we're going to be really lucky in East Cambs that we're going to be part of the project for Happy at Home, or whatever it's called now, which of course follows on for absolutely everything that's been discussed at this committee, including the research project by the youngsters as well, which is really, really good. So so the involvement of that is good as well. But also it was great that I was accepted as a member of the post-COVID cross-party working party for East Cambs, because that's been drilling down on all the various areas of need, working with the officers in all the various different areas, and that has given me a greater input into the wider East Cambs, which has been really, really helpful. And just to say that the volunteering centre in Ely has been awarded a grant by East Cambs and will be the centre for volunteering, and will be taking on some extra training and so on. But he's working with the place-based coordinator, so that we've got that kind of synergy, that we're trying to pull all the volunteers together. But just to say, because I think for Elaine's benefit actually, as well as Adrian, that how the system works, we were, because of now the networks that have all been set up and the way we're all working together, when the scams group came back to us and said, really, can you push out again a need to do this? We had everywhere for it to go. So that I think is also a good way of demonstrating how it's worked over this time, because we now have the ability to spread information really quickly, which is really important. Thank you. Oh, and I'm sorry, but I have to go now because I have another meeting. I'm really sorry, but I've really enjoyed this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. We're almost done, so thanks very much for that. Any questions for Liz quickly before she goes? No? Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Costello, Adela, over to you.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I've sent my report through. I think the main thing I wanted to quickly talk about is the Project Winter Warmers, which has taken off really strongly in Ramsey. I've collected over 250 items, which has been distributed to Ramsey Football Club, Ramsey Food Bank. I can't read my own writing. Mind you, they might need socks, mightn't they?
New opening for you, Adela.
B3, which is a homeless charity in our area, the Conagia House in Huntingdon, where staff have shared them between the elderly, and Cornerstone, which is a charity supporting mums with small children. We've got a new date, the week beginning the 14th of December, where we're hoping to receive items in St Ives, St Neots and Huntingdon. And I'd just like to thank the organisations that have become involved with this, the WI, U3A and all the other knitting groups in the area. Just tremendous response, and that's it for me. I'm going to go and see the footballers and find out what they want.
Thank you, Adela. Any questions for Adela? Okay, thank you. So great work from all our area champions. Thank you very much. So thank you. We'll move on to the last item, item 14, which is the committee agenda plan. Any updates, Adrian, to report?
No, Chair, no changes at all as published.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, members, on the agenda plan? No one showing. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for members and officers for attending, and those that have been watching the live stream. We now bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.